Hello, everyone. This is part 2 of session 20 of Pre-Socratics to Augustine, also called History of Philosophy 1. We are talking about Aristotle's Metaphysics Alpha, and we are now talking about chapter 3 to 10, where Aristotle surveys the views of his predecessors. He wants to see whether any of them came up with a kind of cause or first principle that does not resonate with one of the four kinds of causes that he thinks there are. And just to recapitulate, those are the material cause out of which things are, the efficient cause which sets things in motion, the final cause for the sake of which things are the way they are, and the formal cause, the what it is, or essence or substance of things. And his result is going to be at the end of book 1, Alpha, of the Metaphysics, that none of his predecessors came up with any kind of cause or principle that doesn't, at least roughly, fit into this fourfold distinction. But Aristotle has a lot of criticisms for his predecessors. It's not as if he's saying, well, they came up with all these causes and I'm just kind of summarizing it. He is saying, well, this is my theory of the four causes. And versions thereof have been found by my predecessors. And he puts that in ways that are quite interesting regarding what he thinks about our ability to attain knowledge of the world. He says that truth showed the way, truth compelled them to inquire further, and that even in half blind ways, they were kind of stumbling upon the truth. So, in some sense, it is as if his theory captures the truth as things really are. And because that is such a prominent feature of reality, even those half blind predecessors of his had to somehow run into it. Now, he gives us a kind of account of how that happened on his reconstruction in a kind of sequence. The earliest natural philosophers were focused on material causes. Here we hear about Thales and others who we studied at the beginning of the semester. And then he thinks, well, and then they saw that material causes are not going to set anything in motion. So the earliest people who saw that then somehow postulated that some of the elements are themselves sources of movement. So, for example, they would say everything consists of some elements, and fire is the one that puts everything in motion, is the source of movement. So that is what gets them from the material to the efficient cause. But then they saw that something like fire or earth cannot be the source of beauty and order, he thinks. And that gets them from thinking about the efficient cause to thinking about the final cause, the for the sake of which. Because now we see, or they saw, that somehow we also need some account of why things are as beautiful and as ordered and as good as they are. And that is where, for example, the idea may come up that reason or mind, nous, orders everything. But then they moved from the final cause to the formal cause, and that is what Plato does in postulating the forms. Now, Aristotle himself does not at all believe in separate forms, say the form of the good or the form of the beautiful. And he has some truly harsh criticisms for Plato. He says that really what Plato is saying about the forms does not even get beyond metaphor, and that none of the arguments that Plato is offering is at all compelling. But for now, I want to focus on one other complaint that Aristotle has vis-a-vis the views of his predecessors. And that complaint is quite prominent and important to his thinking. Namely, that they were too much concerned, even to the point of being exclusively concerned in some cases, with material entities. And that they would put forward accounts of being at the universe and of everything as if everything consisted just of material entities. he takes it to be pretty much undisputed that there are also other kinds of entities. Now, for the homework assignment, I want you to think about what is called ontology. We've already talked a little bit about metaphysics. Both of these terms, of course, are not terms that come up in Aristotle. They are terms that we use today. Ontology is often used to designate the field, the line of study in philosophy, where we ask what are the kinds of entities that exist. And sometimes people put that in terms of we study the furniture of the universe. We ask what types of things are there? Are there, material entities, numbers, artifacts, values, and so on and so forth. So, because, it would seem that material entities, let's say numbers and values, suppose they all exist, they are not going to exist quite in the same way. So we kind of start making almost a list of the kinds of entities there are. And then we can ask. And that is then what metaphysics does. That is a kind of division of labor between ontology and metaphysics. Then we ask as metaphysicians, well, what is the nature of these kinds of objects? So I want you to come up for the homework assignment with your own list, your own kind of list of the so-called inventory of reality, where you ask yourself, what kinds of entities do you think exist other than material entities? And I want you to come up with at least 3 examples or 3 cases, 3 types of things that you either think exist or don't exist, and tell me why.